the pleasure of it, the last ride on the old diehard.
Well, kind of sad to see them go, but in a way I'm glad to let them have their rest. They've served their duty.
I come all the way from California to ride this train. I rode these trains and I sold tickets for the South Shore line.
Dedication of the new cars came on October 23rd of 1982. Indiana's Governor Robert Orr was there, so were many commuters, politicians, and rail fans, along with the railroad and NICTY personnel. Honored in absentia was the late Congressman Adam Benjamin, who had been instrumental in the federal legislation which had set up NICTY and brought about the new cars. On hand to operate the first ceremonial train was veteran South Shore engineer Ed Hedstrom, only recently retired.
When I started, we had the old line car, which was one of the original South Shore wooden passenger cars. And I ran that quite a bit, and then, of course, they had the yellow or the orange cars while I was breaking in, and I've ran them now until we get these cars, which I understand are going into service next Monday, November the 1st.
In April of 1985, the Central Electric Railfans Association ran the first charter trip for the new cars. This is CERA President Norm Carlson and film historian Walter Keeble.
On this year's convention, we are taking the first excursion trip on the new South Shore cars, and we have 347 people who are joining us today from a trip to Chicago and to South Bend and back. The people today, Bill, have come from all over the United States and Canada. The furthest away is from British Columbia.
Well, this is the last electric interurban railroad in America, and it's widely known throughout the country. The new cars are a great attraction for everyone, since the old ones are now over 50 years old, finally having been retired just very recently.
Then NICTY decided it should purchase the entire railroad from the chassis system and obtained authorization from the Hoosier legislature. But a new development. A group of private investors offered the chassis $29 million, which was more than NICTY could pay, and the firm known as the Venango River Corporation became the new owners. NICTY now was dealing with that firm instead of the chassis. A new South Shore president, Barry L. Prince, expressed optimism for the future of the railroad.
One of the things we hope to do is to recover a lot of the interchange business that South Shore used to handle between other railroads. Perhaps more important than that is to restore service to single carload, multiple carload shippers in places like South Bend, where the South Shore presence hasn't been very large in recent years.
In a corporate reorganization, Prince left the railroad. But during the first years of new car operation, the passenger load had increased. In 1983, over 2.5 million passengers were carried, a 17% increase over 1982, and that went up to 3 million passengers per year. But troubles for the railroad were not over. On January 21st of 1985, after a cold snap which broke wires at Gary, trains were operating both directions on a single track. Trains of new cars collided just outside the Gary station, injuring many and bringing about heavy damage lawsuits from passengers. Added to that, the federal and state transportation funds were beginning to dry up, and the NICTY board was fearful for the future, that having saved the line, it might become necessary to save it again with an influx of money, probably from local taxes. But for many in both the public and private sectors, a discontinuance of the only rail commuter service from Indiana into Chicago would be unthinkable. So it appears that the South Shore service, like freedom, has to be saved every generation or so.
But she's a good line, and she's a fine line, and she's a hard line, and she's a bread line. Yes, she's a good line, and she's my line, and she's the only way I have to get to work day by day. The ride is bumpy, and sometimes cold. We ride in Nancy cars 50 years old, but I didn't write this letter to complain. No, ask you, Mr. President, the South Shore to retain the special interest interest groups say close down, but 6,000 commuter voices can't be drowned in a chorus loud and strong. Say she's the only way I have kids work day by day. 'Cause she's a good line, and she's a fine line, and she's a hard line, and she's a bread line. Yes, she's a good line, and she's my line, and she's the only way I have kids work day by day. Well, I know that times are tough, but unless we get enough to keep the South Shore on the roll, we're gonna lose what we saved on the welfare roll. I'm not a big shot, I'm just a guy with 2 kids in college and a mortgage tied. So please hear my desperate demand. Keep the wheels of the South Shore rolling through the land. Are you ready? 'Cause she's a good line, and she's a fine line, and she's a hard line, and she's a bread line. Yes, she's a good